Okay, let's unpack this. We are diving deep into a story you probably think you know, but maybe not quite through this lens.
Right.
We've got a bunch of sources here, bits from Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice novel itself, and then material looking at a specific adaptation, the 2005 Joe Wright film.
Yeah, and our job today is basically to pull out the key stuff, the main insights from both. Sort of a shortcut to getting really informed about the original story and this one particular pretty well-known film version.
Exactly. It's fascinating to see how they stack up. The novel gives us this incredibly detailed foundation, right?
Yep.
A specific time, place.
And then you put it next to a film interpretation, and it just highlights how a timeless story can look totally different depending on how it's told.
Absolutely. So let's start right there with Austen's novel Pride and Prejudice, published way back in 1813.
Yeah, Regency era England. And it drops us right into the world of the gentry. That's the landowning class just below the aristocracy.
And Austen's world, the sources make this super clear, is all about social rules.
Oh, completely. The big themes she's exploring, class, marriage, reputation, and even like individual growth are all tangled together.
In that society, who you were, who your family was, and definitely who you married. That decided pretty much everything.
It brings us to the main families. The Bennets and their neighbors, the Lucases.
And the Bennet family, well, their dynamics are key. You've got Mr. and Mrs. Bennet, and then the 5 daughters, Jane, Elizabeth, Mary, Kitty, and Lydia.
And the sources really hammer this home, the behavior of the younger girls, Kitty and Lydia especially.
Their obsession with the officers.
Right, that silliness. Plus Mrs. Bennet's, let's say, energetic social climbing.
Hmm.
It directly affects the whole family's standing.
Elizabeth feels that. The sources mention her deep shame because she knows it tanks their reputation and their marriage chances.
You can see why. It's a heavy burden. Then into this slightly chaotic local scene arrive Mr. Bingley and Mr. Darcy. Rich, single.
Perfect setup.
And they're immediately set up as opposites. Bingley's easygoing, open, instantly liked.
But Darcy, well, he's rich, he's well-bred, but so stiff.
Yeah, the sources describe his manners as uninviting, offending people. Although it's interesting, Bingley really values Darcy's judgment, despite all that.
Which leads perfectly into Elizabeth and Darcy's first meeting. Famously frosty, especially at that ball.
Oh, yeah. Darcy's pride is just out there.
And Elizabeth's reaction is legendary. Charlotte Lucas tries to excuse him, saying he has a right to be proud.
But Elizabeth snaps back with that great line, "I could easily forgive his pride if he had not mortified mine."
Tells you everything about her own spirit, right? She even vows to her mother she'll never dance with him.
Definitely sparks, but yeah, not the romantic kind. Not yet, anyway. Meanwhile, Bingley's hitting it off with Jane Bennet.
The beautiful older sister.
Yes, and there's an interesting debate there, the sources point out. Elizabeth actually approves of Jane being reserved, thinks it's safer.
But Charlotte Lucas, their friend, she's more pragmatic.
Exactly. Charlotte says being too guarded could mean losing the guy. Plus, it's mentioned Jane only saw Bingley at big parties early on. She didn't really know him yet.
And this is all happening under intense social scrutiny. Bingley's sisters, the Hursts, are mentioned snickering about the Bennets' low connections.
Yeah, those uncles, one's a lawyer in Meryton, the other's in trade near Cheapside in London.
And Darcy, initially at least, kind of agrees with that snobbery. Says it hurts their chances of marrying well.
It's a harsh look at the class system, that status anxiety.
But even then, the sources say Darcy starts feeling drawn to Elizabeth, despite those connections. He actually feels relieved when she leaves Netherfield.
That's such a telling detail, isn't it? Shows he's already fighting with himself, his feelings versus his prejudice.
And then Mr. Wickham arrives in Meryton.
Ah, Wickham. Introduced as totally charming, handsome, great manners. Everything Darcy isn't on the surface.
And the sources note that first meeting between him and Darcy, those surprised looks.
You know immediately there's history. Some kind of drama.
We also meet others who really define this world, like the totally pompous Mr. Collins.
Oh, Mr. Collins. His proposal to Elizabeth is pure Austen gold. Highlights that whole transactional view of marriage.
He actually tells her her lack of money isn't an obstacle.
It's just, yeah. And then there's Lady Catherine de Bourgh.
Darcy's aunt? Formidable doesn't even cover it. Super wealthy, lives at Rosings, this grand estate.
With your daughter, Miss de Bourgh, who seems kind of sickly. And Elizabeth immediately thinks, that's who Darcy should marry.
Right. These characters aren't just filler, they embody all those societal pressures Elizabeth and Darcy are dealing with.
Sets the stage perfectly for the conflict.
Which brings us to a huge turning point. Darcy's first proposal. Totally unexpected.
And in the novel, it happens indoors, at the parsonage. Very formal setting for such an emotional bomb. Elizabeth is stunned, then furious.
And she lets him have it. The sources are clear on her reasons,
Yes.
blaming him for splitting up Bingley and Jane.
His terrible treatment of Wickham, based on what she thinks she knows.
And just his general arrogance, his conceit, his scorn, leading to that killer line, "He's the last man in the world I'd ever marry."
Ooh. It's brutal, but it's the catalyst, isn't it? Forces them both to look inwards. And then Darcy writes her that letter.
The letter. That changes everything. It explains his side about Bingley and Jane. He genuinely thought Jane wasn't interested.
And crucially, it reveals the truth about Wickham. How he wasted the money Darcy's father left him.
And then tried to elope with Darcy's little sister, Georgiana, who was only 15, just for her money.
Darcy admits he steered Bingley away from Jane, but says he thought it was for Bingley's good, given Jane's apparent coolness and, well, the Bennet family's behavior.
And reading this,
Yeah.
it hits Elizabeth hard. The sources say she feels awful for Jane, but even more, just deep shame about her own family.
Yeah, their ignorance, the silliness of Lydia and Kitty, her mother encouraging it, her father just being amused.
She finally sees how it damaged their reputation, their prospects,
Yeah.
how her own prejudice against Darcy was based on lies, and her own hurt pride.
It's a massive moment of self-awareness for her.
But it's not just her. Darcy takes her criticisms to heart, too.
He really does. The material points out he learns from that rejection, starts actively trying to change, admitting he was spoiled, proud, conceited.
That willingness from both of them to learn and grow is really what makes their story work.
Absolutely. Okay, so that's the novel's intricate world. Now let's jump forward, nearly 200 years? To the 2005 film, directed by Joe Wright.
And like you said, this is just one adaptation. The sources remind us there are tons. The 1940 movie Bridget Jones, Pride and Prejudice, and Zombies.
Lizzie Bennet Diaries. Yeah, loads. Each one its own thing.
And this 2005 version definitely made its own unique choices. Anglo-American production, decent budget, $28 million.
Shot entirely on location in England. Beautiful locations, Chatsworth House, Wilton House for Pemberley, Groombridge Place for the Bennet's home, Longbourn.
And they made a really specific choice about the time period.
They did. They set it slightly earlier, late 18th century, not the novel's 1813. The sources suggest a couple of reasons. One, maybe to be different from the hugely popular 1995 BBC series.
Right, Colin Firth. Hard act to follow.
And also to bring in a bit of that French Revolution vibe, that sense of change looming over the aristocracy. Plus, apparently the director just didn't like the Regency dresses.
Huh. Fair enough. Artistic license. And the whole look of the film is pretty distinctive, too.
Yeah, the cinematographer, Roman Austen, used lots of moving camera work, rich colors, focused more on the human feel rather than just pristine period drama.
Which gives us those moments people remember, even if they're not straight from the book. Like the Darcy hand flex after helping Elizabeth into the carriage.
Or that long, continuous onesie shot during the Netherfield ball swirling through the room, puts you right in the middle of it.
And the costumes, by Jacqueline Duran, they really feed into this visual approach. Again, those earlier natural waistline styles.
And they use them to show character. Elizabeth often in earthy tones, reflecting her connection to nature. Maybe that tomboy aspect.
And the sources highlight this specific detail. The Bennet's clothes look comfortable maybe, but also a bit worn.
Yes. That muddy hem idea, it visually grounds them, shows their slightly lower social standing compared to the Bingleys or Darcy.
Yeah.
A bit more rustic, less polished.
Contrasts sharply with Pemberley later.
Big time.
The film also had its own take on the characters. Keira Knightley as Elizabeth.
Yeah. Some critics and viewers felt her portrayal was more openly fiery, maybe more rebellious than book Elizabeth, even a bit more distant from her family sometimes.
The director apparently wanted a more real sister relationship, letting them grow apart a bit. Found the book maybe too syrupy on that point.
Yeah.
It's a definite interpretive choice.
For sure. And Matthew McFadden's Darcy generated discussion too. Some found him more obviously emotional. Others missed the gradual thawing from the novel.
Right. Apparently wanted a proper manly man. A great big hunk. His words, supposedly.
Well, okay. The film also seemed to lean into the Bennet family dynamic, maybe showing Mr. and Mrs. Bennet as a bit more loving than some readings of the book.
And they used that overlapping dialogue technique
Yeah.
in the Bennet house scenes.
Right, to make it feel more like a real noisy, slightly chaotic family home, more lived in.
And they definitely changed how some key plot points looked on screen.
Oh, yeah. That first proposal, Intense, but indoors and formal in the book becomes this huge, dramatic outdoor scene in a rainstorm.
Very cinematic.
Yeah.
And the second proposal?
Goes from a daytime walk on a country lane in the novel to this super romantic, misty dawn walk across the moors in the film.
Yeah.
Heightens the romance visually.
Makes sense for a movie.
Yeah.
And of course, they had to trim things down. Some characters, subplots,
Yeah.
gone.
Standard adaptation practice, really. Got to focus it for a 2-hour film.
Yeah.
And the sources mention that final scene, the extra romantic bit added just for the U.S. release.
Oh, right, the Mrs. Darcy scene. Not in the book, not in the UK version initially. Always causes debate.
Exactly. It shows how adaptations respond to different audiences, too, sometimes.
So, with all these changes and specific choices, how did the film go down?
Well, it definitely faced some skepticism, particularly from, hardcore Austen fans.
Understandable.
Some felt the Bennets were portrayed almost like country bumpkins, their house like a barnyard, arguing it kind of undermined their actual social standing as gentry, lacked decorum, maybe.
But you got a lot of praise too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Critics generally liked it. Keira Knightley got great reviews. Some called it her best performance yet. Joe Wright's direction was lauded as a fantastic debut.
And the look of it, the setting.
Yeah, the detailed world building, the overall entertainment factor, it scored well on those points. It definitely found a big audience and critical acclaim.
Which just shows Pride and Prejudice keeps connecting with people, whether it's the book or a film like this. Why do you think it lasts so well, still so adaptable after 200 years?
I think it's because the core themes are just so fundamentally human. Okay, the specifics of Regency marriage markets have changed.
Thankfully.
Right, but the ideas about class influencing relationships, that still resonates maybe in terms of economic differences or social circles now. Reputation.
Yeah.
Huge, maybe even more so with social media.
Sure.
And that central journey overcoming your own biases, your pride, your prejudice, to really see someone else and yourself, that's timeless. That's just human growth.
It feels like the 2005 one are pretty good at packaging those themes for new audiences.
Yeah, the sources mention it was marketed effectively to younger viewers, brought a lot of people to Austen. And Elizabeth Bennet herself, people connect with her, see her as this proto-feminist figure, maybe.
Her intelligence, her refusal to just marry for security.
Exactly. Challenging the expectations for women back then, it still feels relevant.
So ultimately, both the book and this film, they're telling that same basic story about growth, about understanding.
Precisely. It's Elizabeth and Darcy getting past their first impressions, their own flaws. They grow, they change, and then they can accept each other. But only after Darcy changes because of her criticism and after she understands his motives and her own family's issues.
And Darcy admits it, says she taught him a lesson.
He does. And Mr. Bennet's final blessing. It's not about the money Darcy has. It's because he sees Elizabeth has found real love, real respect.
So quite a journey. From the novel's detailed social commentary and sharp characters in 1813 to this visually rich, emotionally charged 2005 film.
Yeah, we've seen how this story about society, judgment, finding yourself, finding love, how it can be reshaped. From Austen's subtle irony to the film's, muddy hems and romantic landscapes.
Both versions, in their own ways, really bring the story to life. A story that still talks to us about family, reputation, and that complicated road to actually understanding someone and yourself.
Which really makes you think. When a story gets told and retold this many times over centuries in so many different forms, what does that say about the core human truths it's tapping into and how each generation finds its own reflection in it?
So what stands out to you about how this deep dive into Pride and Prejudice shows that sometimes the story itself is just the beginning, waiting to be discovered and retold again and again?